everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Alicia Michelson, and I am the Director of Education and Residencies at Peninsula School of Art in Fish Creek, Wisconsin. I am very excited to introduce our spring artists in residence, Angela Johnson and Wendi Turchan Martin. Angela and Wendi will be joining us for a total of 6 weeks in an immersive studio experience that prioritizes time and space for them to engage fully in their creative practice, experiment, and pursue new projects and ideas. Today, we have the opportunity to get to know each of them through brief image presentations. First, we'll hear from Angela Johnson. Angela's photographic practice includes digital, darkroom, and alternative processes, as well as bookmaking and box making. Her work explores the natural world, patterns and repetition, and the idea of home. Angela earned her master's degrees in both art education and fine art from University of Wisconsin-Madison. She is a fixture in the Wisconsin arts community with over 20 years of experience facilitating programs, leading public art installations, and teaching workshops in museums, schools, senior centers, and universities. In addition, Angela is a creativity coach. I'll hand it off to her.
All right, hello, thank you for having me. The next few slides that I'm going to share and show focus on primarily photography, some box making, book building, and we'll follow up with some collaborative projects. So here we go. My photographic journey started about 13 years ago. I had a camera and was really focused on nature and getting up close. I was really interested in simple forms, shape, composition, the details you can find in pine needles, a pine cone, again, getting really up close. And finding fascination in nature, patterns, being meditative in an environment, spending time outdoors photographing. This image was taken in the Aran Islands of Ireland a little over 10 years ago. And while I did take images of big sweeping landscapes, I was also, again, really fascinated with macro, getting up close, again, focusing in on composition, negative space, and was quite excited with this image, with the idea of texture, softness. I went back and forth with the title of this piece. At first, I titled it "Letting Go," but another title, working title I have for it also is "Make a Wish." So I feel like images like this can be straightforward to look at, but they also could be metaphorical in a sense. Moving on to this image here, this was taken in the Great Smoky Mountains and was focusing on shutter speed, slowing things down, showing movement, kind of getting that milky sort of atmosphere of the water as it goes. Once again, focus on nature and landscape. After a while, I love doing straight nature photography, but have been over the last few years exploring double exposures, adding images on top of each other. So once again, playing with opacity, translucency, playing with composition, elements, objects. So creating an image, creating a composition for more than just the object that you see. Again, a dandelion stem, a pine cone, etc. Going back about 5 years ago when I got my Master's of Fine Arts, this is a piece from my MFA exhibition called Grandmother Stories. So using found images from the family album, and I created a double accordion book structure. I used my grandmother's handwriting on the inside of the book that were stories from her journal, but the outside again are images from the family archives. So moving more into photography in a 3D form, I consider it a a collaboration with my grandma for this particular piece. That project, along with some other box building, other projects I've done, about a year ago, I was commissioned to make 14 legacy boxes for a client who wanted to use this element of storytelling to honor his father who had passed away. I have permission to share and show this image. And the idea behind this, the legacy box, I worked with the client to, again, tell his father's story. He had been in the Navy, so that's the reason I used blue marbled paper to represent water. We have an image with small trim on the left showing his a boyhood photo and his last birthday photo before he passed on the right side. And then in the middle is one of the casings from the 21 gun salute at his funeral. And there were 14 of them given to family members, and the box could be displayed two ways. One, folded up, sitting on a shelf as a box, or it opens up as a triptych and can hold itself up on display. And shameless plug, if you're interested, I'm teaching a legacy box workshop here at Peninsula School of Art in October of this year. Another collaboration that I did in 2017, 2018 was with Dr. Anna Scott, who is a professor of genetics at UW-Madison. I worked with her as the artist to create a 40-foot long permanent public installation inside the Biotechnology Center. I laser etched DNA sequences, sections of sequences, onto glass with mirrors mounted behind them. The sequences are of model organisms of commonly studied organisms at universities. So things like fruit flies, zebrafish, C. elegans worms. And it's in a long, 40-foot long hallway where viewers can look at themselves and see themselves reflected in the sequences, also seeing themselves within the mirrors. So this was a very exciting, large public art piece that I worked on. If you want to see more of this up close, I have a short video on my website. You can go to angelajohnsonartist.com, and there's a 6-minute video on this installation that gives a broader view. Another collaboration that I worked on just last year was my husband and I did an artist residency at Zen Preserve, which is part of Art Servancy, which is a year-long art residency that is put on by Gallery 224 in Port Washington, Wisconsin, where you get partnered up at a nature preserve and make artwork for a year representing your experience there. So my husband's a woodworker. He did his own projects, and I partnered with Miyu Matsuko, who is a recent undergrad in graphic design at UW-Madison. And I worked with her to translate my photographs I took of the changing seasons at Zen into photo illustrations. And we published this coloring book in November of 2021 last year. And you can find more info on my website for the coloring book, or you can also find it on Amazon. Another collaboration, can you tell I like to collaborate with other artists? My husband and I did a project at the Farley Center in Verona, Wisconsin, which is a natural path and green burial space. There was a call for a variety of artists to do artwork, and we chose to do long strips of cyanotypes where we used pre-treated cyanotype fabric on cotton and put down natural materials, leaves, twigs, and put them in the trees. This was called blowing in the wind. So you can kind of see and feel and experience the movement while you're there. So this was a really fun project that led me to another project I'll be working on while I'm here at Peninsula School of Art. I received a Blink grant through the Madison Arts Commission, and I'm going to be creating a larger and different version of this using dried native plant species and images and digital negatives to make an installation that will be at Obrick Gardens and be unveiled this year for gallery night on May 6th. So the last image that I will leave you with is this experimental cyanotype that I created last year using leaves, a little bit of Dawn dish soap to create some bubbles, turmeric, and some saran wrap to add texture to. So also while I'm here, I'm planning to experiment a bit and see how far I can push cyanotypes into new and creative realms. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela. We also have Wendi Turchan Martin in residence. In an ongoing body of work, Wendi explores connections between home and the landscape by merging fragments of plants with colors, textures, and patterns connected to interior fabrics and textiles. She earned her BFA from University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh and MFA from the University of Oregon. Wendi's work has been featured in New American Paintings, as well as national and international exhibitions. She notably collaborated with Saatchi Art and Pantone on a project for Color of the Year, Ultraviolet. In the spring of 2021, Wendi completed her 7th year as a lecturer at University of Wisconsin-Fond du Lac. Take it away, Wendi.
Hi, everyone. So my background is in working primarily with painting, drawing, and collage, really exploring the relationship between color and shape through painting. This first image is from 2017. At that time, I was doing a lot of walking outside, observing shape, quality of light, the way that things would kind of move and flicker in the wind. And I never took any images or did any sketches. Instead, I would go back into my studio and I would work from memory. I was trying to capture the idea of these places or the way that they made me feel or what I experienced when viewing instead of what they actually looked like. As I would work, I'd build up these layers of transparent and opaque paint, and the process was really intuitive. I thought a lot about blurring the space between what was real and what was an imaginary within my memory, hiding some things and revealing others through that process. This collage work here is from about 1 year later. I was still working in that same way, but I really wanted to begin playing around with the physical quality of the collage elements. Here, thinking about how shadows could kind of make the paper move and come alive and do more of what I wanted it to, that I couldn't achieve just with paint on the surface. So I would bend the paper, I would kind of position it in a way that the shadow would make the surface change depending upon where it was being viewed, and it would feel like it was kind of living and moving. With this collage, I was trying to make something that looked almost like leaves blowing in the wind, and this larger form kind of trying to reach towards that smaller one, but never really quite getting there to kind of add that layer of weight and tension. At the same time I was working with these collage pieces, I began to utilize them as stencils within paintings. So here in this example, I'm starting to experiment with spray paint to achieve that. The stencils themselves would then be recycled into other work. So it was really kind of these two complementary bodies of work informing one another at the same time. I also began playing around with letting some of the collaged elements blend into the negative space, trying to see if I could achieve something similar to that transparent buildup of layers in my earlier paintings, working with a painted background, unlike the earlier collage work that was done on toned paper. Here I was trying to see if I could get some of those pieces to almost feel like what a whisper sounds like, with that just subtle change and shift through color. Up to this point, I had been primarily working with paper on wood panel. Painting on canvas has always been very challenging for me. The texture and the bounce of the surface is very difficult to control. And I do like to control things a little bit. So this painting was meant to be an experiment to try to work with the canvas instead of fighting against it, and to see if I could make a painting that looked like a collage, but that was completely flat. I used hand-cut vinyl stickers to achieve the crisp edges, and this really opened the door to a new method of working for me. In 2019, I started feeling this shift. I really wanted to start letting more of myself into my paintings. The exploration of personal has always been challenging for me with making work in an area in which I wasn't completely comfortable and wanted to begin to explore and to push myself on if I could. For as long as I can remember, I've been really fascinated by the idea of home, both as a place, but also as a feeling. For me, I find home in objects, the way they look, the way they smell, the way they feel. Items like quilts, they have their own history and they're imprinted with this meaning over years as people live with them. I've also found home in certain landscapes, which for me provide this place of escape, of possibility, comfort, and a deeper connection to myself in the world. There's nothing like standing outside with nothing around you and just feeling your feet on the ground and the wind and the light on your body. So I began a series of work exploring these connections, merging imagery of plants with colors, textures, and patterns. And for the first time, I was working with photographs and I was doing an exact copy of the contours of the plants themselves because I wanted them to be there, exploring actual imagery. This was a first time for me, and I really wanted that sense of this is that thing, and it's been kind of copied perfectly, but I am altering it, I am changing it. The crisp edges of the shapes that I achieved through this method of painting reminded me of pieced and quilted forms, and I began to pull color and texture from the objects around my home or the colors that I associated with people who made me feel that sense of home. Things like lavender from my mother, the black and white texture from a vase that I bought at a moment of huge transition and vulnerability in my life, pink for the quilt I had as a child that I kept on my bed no matter where we lived or where we went until I was in my mid-20s. And this large banana leaf plant for the way that it made me feel in such awe when I saw it, and for the person who was with me when I saw it. Last spring, my ideas about home really started to shift, and they did for many others as well. A health issue meant that I was less active outside, and for the first time in my life, the landscape became a place of deep frustration and questioning about what the rest of my life would look like. I started thinking about the body as a home, and I took a break from painting at this time. I thought it would be brief, but it turned into this year-long exploration of materials and an enormous opportunity to reassess. I spent my year with embroidery, quilting, fabric dyeing, block printing, and punch needle rug hooking. Each piece started to really feel like a journal entry in itself. Instead of reflecting on the past through more abstract concepts and ideas, I was working my way through the present as I was experiencing it. This made me feel quite raw and vulnerable, but has been deeply rewarding. These 4 punch needle pieces were made while I was undergoing IVF, and I was reflecting upon my hopes and processing the experience. The rhythmic quality of working with that punch needle, just kind of the wave and the rhythm of it felt so satisfying and became really important to me. The forms themselves are quite abstract. They could really be anything to anyone, although they're very personal and specific to me. That has always been the lure of working abstractly, is this idea of what could be instead of what is. And about 6 months ago, I began painting again, but I just felt unsatisfied. I realized how significant the physical connection to working with fibers had become to me over the past year. I recently started weaving, and it feels like something has finally clicked into place. The process itself feels like coming home, even though I've never been here before, and I don't really know what I'm doing yet. I have so much to learn, and right now I'm just kind of working through samples, sketches, and ideas, really relying on my sketchbook to catalog these kind of journal entries of experiences as I have them, in hopes that once my skill matches my ideas, I'll be able to pursue them more. So here with this gift of time, I'm hoping to reflect upon what the past year has been like for me in my studio, think about these new ideas, and work towards a more resolved body of work.
Thank you so much, Wendi. It was a pleasure to hear from both of you today. Toward the end of their residency, we will be hosting an end of session studio tour. If any of you tuning in are in the area, I hope you will join us and see what Angela and Wendi have been working on during their time with us. Before you go, we are fortunate to have both Angela and Wendi returning this summer and fall to lead 2 workshops each. Wendi will be teaching purposeful play, as well as acrylic painting for beginners. Angela will be teaching beyond the postcard picture and box making for photographers. There are still a handful of spaces available in each of these workshops. If you're interested in joining them, please visit our website or reach out to us directly to learn more and register. Thank you again for tuning in today. Please follow us on social media for behind the scenes updates on Angela and Wendi's time with us this spring.